So, hi, my name is Phil Stekowski. I'm leading the threat intelligence program within Adobe. And today I'll speak about intelligent threat intel and how you can actually achieve it by implementing the LEAD framework. So, for starters, I'll go through some threat intelligence history so we get better understanding where it was threat intelligence and where we are now and what are the problems that we are trying to tackle. So, 1986, probably some of you read the book. It's one of the first examples of incident response and threat intelligence as well. It was when Cliff Stoll was found as a suspicious activity while working at California Berkeley National Laboratory. And later the full investigation led to finding that behind the attack it was hacker located in Germany, which was working for the Russian KGB. So it was one of the first examples to see that you can use computers to get military secrets. Back then, it was done through telephone lines, but it was the first example of how actually cyber attacks are working, and as well that state-sponsored actors are going after different state nations. Many years after, didn't happen much because this was so early, it was before the World Wide Web. So we're going to 2011. This is when threat intelligence became a huge thing. It was all about IOCs and APTs, and everyone was like, wow, we need to have threat intelligence. This is the thing that we need to do. It was really important and good for the threat intel in general, because that's when most of the threat intel programs were created, and there were a lot of money spent to it. So this helped boost the development of threat intelligence, and this is when most of the companies started building their threat intel programs. So it was good, but it came to there were a few problems. It was all about IOCs, and that was not sustainable. So after a few years, companies have seen, okay, we have these IOCs, we catch all the APTs. What's next? What else we can do? 2016, it became more interesting. So we are going into the behavioral analysis. So it's not just IOCs. We are analyzing more the techniques and tactics that the attackers are using. It's when it's all about threat hunting. So when we integrate threat intelligence with threat hunting, and we try to better understand how an attack is working, not just simply rely on the atomic indicators and waiting to have a hit on an IP domain or file hash. But the thing is that as is developing, threat intelligence is becoming a little harder to implement it. They appear, from what I'm seeing, two problems. Working the past 5 years, specifically in threat intelligence, I found that we arrived to a point where we have two main problems with threat intelligence, and it's becoming harder and harder to sustain it and to implement it within the environment. The first one is non-essential. So it's something that currently it's nice to have. It's not like in the 2011 that you needed to have it because that's how you catch the APT. And the second one, there's too much data. So going through all this year, there are so many threat intel feeds, so many vendors, data is coming from all the ways. It's not standardized, it's sort of chaos. So to try to make sense of it, it's kind of hard. The non-essential problem, I'm comparing to the smart home. I mean, threat intel, when you're looking in the enterprise environment specifically, threat intel is something like a luxury. It's like your smart home. You can live without it, but if you have it, your life might be more productive. It will be easier to, it might be easier for you. You can have better control, but you need to spend a lot of money on it. It's not something that you'll just put it there and it will work and won't cost you much. Further, if you're going on the cybersecurity sliding scale, the problem with the non-essential is that most of the certifications that companies are getting, or when auditors are looking at the security controls implemented, usually this is how the list looks like. Architecture, you must have it. Passive defense, it's another thing that you must have it. Active defense as well. Nowadays, even the offense, I mean, the pen testing is something that is required by the auditor, so you cannot just go without it. But threat intelligence, it's, okay, it's nice to have. You don't really need to spend money investing on it. You can do it just a little. And this side, this thing on the right, is not helping at all. So as you can see, it's super expensive to maintain it. For a nice thing to have and expensive to maintain it, it's making it really hard for a threat intel program to sustain it or to make it essential, especially in the enterprise environment. So, yeah, we'll go into more detail how we can tackle this problem. The idea is that we want to lower the value and lower the costs and increase the value on the threat intelligence. So we make it actually must-have rather than nice-to-have. The threat intelligence data, exactly how it looks like. So we have a ton of feeds. This pole in the middle holding everything. It's probably your threat intel platform. And yeah, this is how it looks like. And you're assigned to make sense of all of this and find what is coming to this pole and where it should go. So it's a tough job. So as soon, I think, as you achieve the point that you need to handle with big data on daily basis, then when things are getting complicated. So how we solve the problem? Well, after seeing multiple, I would say, maturity models, threat intel program suggestions over the 5 years, I was like, okay, let's put it on a paper. Let's see what it worked, what it didn't work, and let's base it on simple principle that can make the threat intel program work, and I can share it with everyone else, so we can make threat intel a must-have thing. So in the end, it went into a 4 principle. The first one is the relevant, so you need to know what data is relevant to you. Don't start with everything. Don't go with threat intel and I'll take everything and after I'll make sense of it. First, you need to set up your requirements and understand what is relevant to you and then go further. Secondly, once you have the relevant data, you need to make it efficient because you'll have a lot of context, you'll have a lot of data, but if it's not efficient, if you don't score it and categorize it properly, it will fail. The third one is the analyst-driven. This is all about the feedback. So threat intelligence, it will be one-way street if you don't get the feedback and you don't apply it. It's all about the feedback. So the lead framework, it will help us how we can prepare for that feedback and apply it so we can create a dynamic threat intelligence database rather than static like most of it is. And the last point is deliverable. All this will be for nothing. We cannot deliver it to our stakeholders and it's not in the format that we want. And as well will help us with some metrics because no metrics, that means we cannot justify it in the end. So these 4 principles, they are based on 2 elements each. I said the relevant is based on the threat profile, so we understand from whom and what we are trying to defend. The threat intel program requirements, it's more related to the maturity model, so to understand where you will start and what's next for you, where you're heading. And that will give you the relevant threat intelligence. Once we have that, we are going to the efficient portion, where we apply the threat intel data scoring and threat intel data categorization. I think this is the core of a threat intelligence platform and program in general, because if you don't know what is important for you, it won't work. You'll just choke in data, and with the time, it will fail. Analyst-driven, as I said previously, the feedback loop is something really important. If you are not able to get your feedback and apply it properly, the data will be never enough for you. So on top of that, you can apply some machine learning that will help you even boost even further the improvement of your threat intel data, and as well predicting adversary TTPs. And the last portion is the deliverable, so standardize as much as possible and build metrics on top of it. I'll dive into each principle into more detail so I understand how you can build it and what you actually need to succeed, or how the lead framework is leading you on building better threat intelligence program. I know the lead word is a little maybe cheesy or marketing, but I was thinking more of a something that it will be a framework that will really do its work, so you can apply it right away. It won't be just high-level principles. So the relevant data, it's all about from who you are trying to defend. So understand what are your adversaries. If you're one of those organizations or enterprises that you are looking just to defend from state-sponsored and you have a lot of intellectual property to defend, or maybe your problem is ransomware and crypto miners, so don't go into the state-sponsor. It's just getting things more complicated. Or it might be just organized crimes and hackers. So on the top level, we can see the complexity of the attack as well, and that will help you understand what type of data you need. Do you need just IOCs? Do you need IOAs? On what you should put your focus on. Second is the infrastructure. So don't take any feed or data that it will be for industrial control systems if your environment is all mobile. It won't make any sense, and you'll be just spending your resources and time on something that it won't work for you. So understand the infrastructure specifically that you're trying to defend. Also, if you have like enterprise that has really big infrastructure and you have all of them, prioritize them. Don't start with everything. See what is the most important and make the link between the state sponsor. They most likely will go to specific things. They won't go to everything. They won't go to the payment systems because they're not economically motivated. They're after the intellectual property. So this should give you the answer on the relevant threat intel. So it will show you what are the sources and feeds that you need. Now we're going to building the threat intelligence program. So this is the requirements. I created a maturity model, and here in the middle you can see this L1 to L5. So I've analyzed multiple maturity models. The majority of them, they reflect to 5 different levels. In the middle I added those, so in case you're already working on threat intel program and you are using one of the maturity models, so you can map it to it. On the other side, I've seen that they don't really work. It's just showing, it's more of a, I would say, marketing thing that the threat intel vendors are developing. That's why I simplified. So I made it in 2 stages. Your early stage, or you have mature program. You just started, or your lead framework is just fine-tuning at the moment. The maturity model that we have here is based on the 3 key elements, which is the use cases and consumers. So when you start the threat intel program, the main thing from where it starts in many cases is the incident response, security operation, your passive defense, and then we are going further into threat hunting and pen testing on non-security services. The idea is that, as you can see, for these ones, you will need mainly IOCs, where when you go in threat hunting, pen testing, it's all about the indicators of attack. You won't rely anymore on IOCs. If you're doing threat hunting and you just do IOC matching, you're doing it wrong. Non-security services, it's key element, I would say. As soon as you start using threat intelligence outside of all these that are mentioned on the left side, then actually when you'll see value. Try to use threat intelligence everywhere possible that you can. Don't stop at the security services. You have, let's say, customer authentication portals. Try to see there if you can prevent some brute force attempts, credential stuffing attacks. If you have payment systems, try to implement threat intelligence for your payment system so you prevent fraud on your customers. If you have code repositories, try to check and try to see if there are some actors going after your GitHub code and how you can help and analyze it. So that's the main idea, just to go outside of the comfort zone, I would say. The integration type, we'll start with automation. No automation means your threat intel won't work. You cannot go with Excel spreadsheets and just add them to specific blacklist and accept that you will do threat intelligence. That won't work. So you need to automate everything. Everything needs to happen in an automated manner. You need to have workflow where you can automatically filter all the false positive, expire the data, and we'll go into more details about that a little later. About the orchestration machine learning, then when it's getting interesting, because here you'll need to orchestrate multiple automations, and it won't be just one single thing, send the data and expect to see if it was useful or not. And the machine learning, this is when you try to make sense of all of that automation that you did, and to bring even more context on your threat intel database. As I said, this is the early stage is also less expensive, and it will cost you less resources. So that problem that we've seen earlier, where it will cost you a lot, this should help, because you have just the automation. And on top of that, it all reflects to the feeds that you have. Why it costs less? Because start with threat intel sharing groups, open source intelligence, and internal intel everywhere that you can find. That's the juicy stuff. That's the best thing that you can do. You can start just with searching at your internal threat intelligence. Check what you get on your firewalls. Try to build threat profiles based on that. And with some research, you can extend and see what is the next thing that you might see. Threat intel sharing groups, they're great. Most of the time they're helpful, especially if it's a threat intel sharing group that just started. Then when it's pretty good, and with the time they lose value because everyone is trying to send what just for the sake of sharing. Open source intelligence, it can be useful, but don't use it as it is, because I don't know if you tried using just open source intelligence on itself. You'll see the SOC team coming screaming that threat intel is bad. So it won't help you at all. Try to combine it with the rest, and just to provide context and see what is really relevant. Once you're done with that and you're ready to go next step, then you go in the paid threat intel feeds. And you'll need to pick wisely, because you don't want to spend money on something that you won't trust. All the way, use standard stuff as much as possible. You can go, these are just some examples, the Sticks 2.0, Sticks version 1, that was a bad thing, but we have a chance with Sticks 2.0. The MITRE ATT&CK framework or the cyber chain, whichever it works for you, try to apply it from its beginning and create a threat library. That's the core of your threat intel, is if you can relate all your indicators to the threat actors and TTPs that you have, then you can really make sense of your data. And now we are going into the threat intel scoring. I think this is the core, as I said, of your threat intel platform, of a threat intel program, whatever it is. If you can make this scoring, I'm saying it will definitely work. It will give you really good understanding on what is important for you and what you should just keep it as informational or throw it away. On the left side, we have the scoring. On the right side, we have the categorization. We go with the scoring, and I start with three important elements. One is the indicator type. Not all indicators are equal. So this is just an example. So for me, for example, IPs, they're less important, so I'll decrease the score or confidence level on those. File hashes, they're more important. But depends, again, what you're trying to defend. What is your infrastructure? If your main focus is on brute force attempts, credential stuffing attacks, DDoS, IPs, they're highly valued. So adjust it based on the environment that you have. Other thing when considering the IP types, the indicator types, is how often they're changing. IPs, they can be recycled pretty fast. File hashes, no, you hit file hash, it's 100% match. Of course, the malware, it can change the file hash over time, and it will have the same malware, probably 100 different file hashes, but that hit, you're confident that when you catch it, it's on point. Where IP, it can be a web server with 1,000 other websites. You get a hit on it, well, it can be a lot of false positives. The threat intel sources, as I said, this is who you trust more. Open source intelligence is great. It's all over the place. It's for free, but it has its own downsides. There are plenty of GitHub repositories or just open source feeds that I'll give you some information. They don't provide much context. It'll be, this IP is bad. Like, why it's bad, and I won't throw it to my CM or IDS or IPS just because you say it's bad, and I don't know on which port actually the malware is communicating. If it's a web service and it's hitting on port 80, all the web traffic, it will hit on it, and you'll be just stuck with a lot of alerts. So in many cases, what I did with open source intelligence, I just use it for enriching context, just to know what is out there. And there are only small portions of open source intelligence feeds that you can really rely on it, but you'll need to do a lot of filtering. And if you apply all of this, actually, all this scoring, it will help you filter what is important. Threat intel sharing groups, I said how they mainly start, it's they're gathering a bunch of people and they're like, okay, we'll share the juiciest, the coolest stuff that we have. And everyone is excited, and that's how it starts. But after a while, it's more of a, okay, for the sake of sharing, I'll just throw you, I don't know, the firewall hits that I have in the last 7 days. It's a lot of noise there, and that's why they became pretty bad, especially the ones that are made from the sponsored by governments, that they're like, okay, just for the sake of sharing that we give some information to everyone, we'll establish these groups, but a lot of that data it's old. It's like attack that happened 5 years ago. None of that infrastructure is valid anymore. So yeah, of course, depends on the group. Some, especially if they're newer one, they'll be more useful. So you can increase and change them afterwards. Paid vendors, if they're not on the right side, actually on the left side, you don't put them, you don't buy them. And why would you spend money on something that you don't trust, that it will decrease your confidence? So choose wisely, I would say there. You need to know specifically what they provide you. Is it the data that you need? And in the end, don't buy them in the end if you're not confident that they can really help you, or they can increase the score in this matrix. And the internal threat intelligence, as I said, is the juiciest stuff. So it's all the time there to increase the score. Adversary, you can use it or not, depends how good is your data. I said if you use your standardized formats from the beginning, you have everything related, you can use it to score it. Because there's maybe specific threat actors or malware families that you're trying to defend from. If you're looking just for crypto miners, they'll be the ones that they'll increase your score. And if nation state sponsored, probably you're too small for them, so you won't be interested. You won't just add the highest score just because they're national state sponsored. They won't come ever after you, so why just destroying your database? And in between we have also how old or new is your data. So that you might use it or not, depends how much you trust your data or trust the source. Newer data, of course, it will be something that you increase the score, and the older one you decrease it, but it's not in all the cases. For file caches, doesn't matter how old they are, you still trust them because it's 100% match on them. And on the bottom we have the context. As you have seen probably in most of the threat intel programs, trainings, it's all about the context. There is no value in the threat intelligence if you don't have context, if you don't know what is happening with that specific indicator, or you cannot tie it to specific TTP or threat actor. So context, of course, again, it can increase or decrease your score, depends what is the context that you have. For example, I've seen in some of the feeds, they share their confidence level in indicators. So you get from one feed and it's saying it's high confidence, we're sure that this is bad stuff. You have another feed is saying, well, we have low confidence, we have seen some false positive. So try to balance between those. I mean, account for both of them, because you don't know which one is actually true. Any malware family, infection vector, or if you can tag your data to specific OS, it's another good thing. I love that one, because if you have OS specific environment, you have all Linux environment, why would you bother and you won't score high anything that is Windows oriented, because it won't probably affect you. Targeted sector and region, another good thing. Probably if you're in Europe and your retail sector, you won't be interested in what is affecting the mining sector in Asia. So another thing that will help you. When you have all that done, it's you separate the data in buckets. So you have use case categories. this is when I was saying earlier about how and where you're using the threat intel data. You have different stakeholders. So don't send everything. You made the scoring and you have now, let's say, 1 million indicators with score high or high confidence, or 1 to 10, for example, it's the 10 score. You won't send that to everyone because it won't be relevant to them. So you need to understand which data set is relevant to your stakeholders. So separate it in separate buckets, tag it. You can use tags or status or anything else that is helpful for you, just to be separated in some way, and you know what and where you should use it. And the last one, you apply if it's active or expired. So you have the scoring, but you need to know if it's active, expired, or false positive. So you'll report on the active data, and if it is false positive for really old data, of course, you won't use it because there is way higher chance that it will be false positive, or it will just destroy your data set. Okay, so that was about the scoring. Now we go into the feedback loop. So here we have the standard threat intel architecture, I would say. You have the external, internal sources that you get. In the middle, you have your threat intel database platform. About the threat intel database or platform, when you're in early stage, you won't want, because you want to reduce the costs, and to help you on that pyramid with the costs to be in your advantage, don't go with something pricey. Go with open source stuff and try with those. There's some really cool open source project that you can use for that purpose. And then you can evolve further and use something that it's actually more pricey. Of course, it might serve you better. In the threat intel database, you have the context enrichment. So it can be anything that is OSINT. You can use virus total, passive total, all those kind of things that will give you that thing down on the scoring scale. It's all about the context. This will help you a lot in the scoring, and then you have all the scoring categorization. For all that, we have the automation just to send the data to your consumers. And then we have the orchestration going back. Why we have orchestration here? Because it's about the feedback. So this won't be just one system that it will get the data back. Probably you'll have CM, you'll have different stakeholders that are consuming the data. They all have different feedback they'll provide. From the SOC, probably will come in big piece of comment or analysis that they did. From your incident response, it will come a huge incident response report that they did. So you'll need to be ready to consume all of that. So the feedback, this is how I separate it. It's first thing, is it true positive or false positive? Is what you send them useful or not? The second is the context is matching. Just an example. You have a crypto miner, you send it to your SOC team, they're seeing it's not anymore a crypto miner, now it's some state-sponsored threat actor that is going on. So your context didn't match. That means that you have new context that you need to bring it back to your threat platform. And based on the new context that you bring, you decrease or increase the score. It can be a reverse way. It can be, if it's false positive, most likely you'll decrease the score or just take it out. With the false positive, it's also tricky. If you have multiple stakeholders, some they'll say, okay, it's false positive for me, but it's not for everyone. So don't use right away false positive to remove the data. Use the scoring system again to filter it. If you have 5 false positive hits or 5 different stakeholders that said it's false positive, then take it out. Don't rush with your decisions on the scoring. Some use cases is you can use it for filtering the data, context enrichment. You can use it for research. So if you have, especially from incident response, you get all that huge report about specific indicator or threat actor. You can use it to research it and find what's next. And in the end, you can use it for machine learning. Well, you're wondering how. So machine learning, there are 2 specific use cases that I came up. Probably there are more, and if you have any ideas, I'm really happy to discuss after the talk. First is to create the dynamic threat intel. As I said, the SOC probably will have huge chunk of comments that they're adding, or the incident response report, it will be some huge report. You won't be able to score based on all that huge text that they're sending you. with different payment systems, they might be something even different. They might be even some logs that they make no sense for you. So you'll need to apply some machine learning to understand and score different keywords. And based on those keywords, then you can adjust your scoring, because the keywords, you can use them to increase or reduce the score as part of the context. And data mining. So this is pretty popular. There are even some vendors as well. The threat intelligence team and Microsoft, they did some really cool with data mining. That is using machine learning to go through everything that is open source, scan it, and map it. So you can see how specific threat actors or malware is trending over time, what are the latest things that they developed, or what is the overlap. Like that also you can understand you're focusing on one malware family, but that it's overlapping, let's say 80% with another one, and you are not even looking into it. That can give you some good idea of what is the adversary infrastructure and what you should concentrate. More about machine learning, I won't go into specific algorithms or details now, but there is a talk later by my colleagues on Track 3, it's the last Friday, I think, and you can check it out. They're doing some really cool stuff there. Deliverables. So, yes, this is all about standardized format. Whatever platform you have database, expose the API completely. So, everything that is in your database should be available through the API. That will help you a lot with when you're implementing with systems that are outside of the usual CM. And have the standard format. JSON, I'm picking because it's relating to the STIX 2.0 structure. So yeah, this is STIX 2.0. Probably some of you have seen it. This one is cool. I mean, if you are looking at the STIX 2.0 structure, you'll be, well, that's too complicated. I don't want that. This is kind of cool. I mean, it's simplified. It's easier to use it. And nowadays, most of the vendors, even the open source feeds, they're using it. So it's something really cool. You can try it. If you have any other standards of platforms that you're using, come to share them so we know what is out there. And if more people are using the same standard, it's also easier to collaborate on threat intelligence. And about the metrics. So this is what will help you actually justify your threat intelligence. From what I've seen till now, three important ones. First, actor-driven. Don't make your threat metrics actor-driven, because you might get lucky. You will get probably the first time you get an APT that you caught, you got some cool stuff that you can add in your report. That won't last long. You'll get lucky once or two times. But if you make them actor-driven, actually you dictate, your actors dictate how successful is your threat intel program, which you don't want that. Second, you can use a lot how and where is used threat intelligence. That is a huge boost, because if you're using it more and more across your enterprise, it will be easier to justify it. And it's harder as well to shut it down. If you have like 10 different services that are using your threat intelligence, they won't just shut it down because it's too expensive, and it's easier to justify the costs. And the last is the audience. So all those cool charts and numbers, you can show them to the executives, but for the technical stuff, you don't want that. You want something that will be specific for the threat actor, for the malware family, they can take action on it. Your threat hunting team, again, they'll want something specific. They want a specific threat that they want to concentrate. If your audience is security related or non-security, again, you cannot go into too many details how the fancy bear or APT25 is it's operating if the audience is not security related. You'll need to give just higher level threat landscape and how actually their activity can affect your you specifically. As well, the internal external, it's more of what you can share and not, because of course internally you can share way more stuff, rather than externally be a little reserved on what you want to give away. Key takeaways. So yeah, it's all about delivering actionable and relevant threat intelligence. As long as you're doing that, your threat intel program will thrive, I would say. And the release framework, it's one way of succeeding with that. More feedback is the better. If you don't use the feedback it won't work in the long run. So get all that feedback, and maybe with the use of lead framework, you can make sense of it and make your threat intel database dynamic rather than static like they're most to it nowadays. And use it outside of the conference. As I said, try any service where you can use threat intelligence. Don't just concentrate, okay, yes, you started with the SOC IR, but go outside, see where there are other use cases that you can use threat intelligence. Think of everything. Speak with different teams within your company to understand how they're doing and what they're doing, so you can maybe help them with threat intelligence. It can go not just from IOCs and threat landscape, it can go into researching dark and deep web and finding maybe compromised credentials there, or what are the latest malware kits. You can purchase a malware kit, disassemble it, understand how it works. So huge thing for threat hunting. So yeah, that's mainly it. Okay, and we have some time for questions.
Yep.
Thank you. So I'm, based on my current role, I'm a threat intelligence consumer, and I have constant interactions with my threat intelligence team. So I'm really interested in what's your take, and how would you describe the perfect feedback loop between the consumers? And when I'm talking about consumers, I'm actually referring to your security operations team, threat hunting team, incident response team. I'm excluding execs from this question. And how would the principles that were encompassed in your framework will aid with this process?
Yes. So, I mean, as I said, it's really important to get everything possible. So don't just go with, okay, we have these 5 fields that you need to fulfill, and that's how I get the feedback. Get everything, because you can, especially if you're using machine learning, you can get way more context out of it rather than just using specific keywords or just saying it was false positive or not. So listen to your analyst. That's what I would say, and it will help you a lot with building your threat intelligence. When your threat intel team, probably you won't have so many resources, so use anyone as your analyst. Get your feedback. That's the point.
Thank you.
We have another one.
Hello. So I have one question about the A part of lead.
Yes.
About the analyst decision. You said that you're using machine learning algorithms for the feedback loop. What would you say would be the most appropriate algorithm for doing that?
Well, as I said, because it's mainly based on text and comments, it will be to analyze the text actually and to find the keywords. What are the most common words that are used in the specific comment? You can start with that and to see. When we did some tries with that, it might work, but over the time it is changing, especially if you make a huge data set and you analyze 5 years. Maybe the analysts that they were working that and they change. They have different way of writing their comments. So that might break a little your machine learning approaches. We haven't tried many other ones, but yeah, I can introduce you to someone that will go into the specific of the machine learning and tell you the algorithms, if you're interested.
Oh, yes, I was interested if it's SVNs or...
I can introduce you to someone, because I'm not the machine learning data scientist.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, folks, are there any other questions? Okay, one more question. So I have that guy from... Yeah.
So I just have one.
Yes.
Thanks very much for the presentation. I'm just wondering, have you ever evaluated your threat intelligence exercise? So, I mean, there's a lot of gut feeling there at the beginning. There is a lot of analysis, but there's no numbers. So I'm just wondering if you have any way of evaluating all this.
Yes, so I mean, the metrics that I showed earlier in the principles, they're based on the last 3 years I've been doing more specific metrics. One of them is, I mean, you can go with the numbers that they are first in there in your advantage. Don't show the numbers that they go downwards. Also, those use them to fix your program. If you have a stakeholder, let's say one of the teams that you're sending threat intelligence, the detections is just decreasing. That means that you need to fix your data. You won't show that metric to your executive to say, look, we implemented with this one and it's just going down. So no, that you're keeping it for your team. That's why I said pick your audience. The stuff that they're going upwards, where it will show, okay, we had 10 different incidents detected in the last quarter. That's something that you want to go into more details, and you want to show it to higher level because it's in your advantage. So if you try to build metrics everywhere possible, see how many detections you have on your SIEM, on your firewalls, DDoS protection, wherever you're using it. When you see the numbers, then decide what you should and where to use it.
But one more point. Don't you think that just you coming with the metrics might be wrong? I mean, might be just a gut feeling exercise?
Well, the thing is with the threat intelligence, there is no standard how you can build metrics. I mean, if other thing is don't wait your executive to set your metrics because that will be wrong. They don't know what is happening in threat intelligence. And in many cases, it's actor driven. So you need to go out of that and to find better ways to justify it. Of course, I mean, yes, you're the one that you're leading the program, you're building your own metrics, but that's all about. I mean, you were assigned a task to build a program, you need to show that actually it values. You need to find value in each point that it is, or each portion that you have from the threat intel.
Super, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Philip, for your presentation. That was awesome.